And we're live. I'm Dr. Jeff Murdoch here at the University of Arkansas with the University of Arkansas chapter of the American Choral Directors Association. We have our ACDA students and some NAFME students, and all of them are interested in music education. And I'm excited that this chapter thought to host this event with all of the GRAMMY Music Educators. And so we're fortunate to have all of these folks that I call my friends now. If we'll just go down the line and have you all introduce yourselves, not in any particular order, but maybe the order that we have on the screen. So we'll start with Mickey Smith.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Mickey Smith Jr., and I am an educator for about 20 years now. I've taught primarily in Louisiana, spent some time in Texas, and now I reside in South Florida, where I teach 4th through 12th grade, 8 to 18 every day, living the dream, instrumental arts, primarily band. And it's just a blessing to be with you guys today. And if I had to describe what I do, I just feel like each and every day I get an opportunity to do more than teach, to reach. And for me, it's a chance to engage, educate, and elevate every learner I have through excellence and through music so that they know they're loved, valued, and wanted. And for me, making that my mission statement helps every day be a Wednesday. Whether or not they may accomplish the task at hand, the whole goal is to make sure that they know that they have value and significance. And that's what music was for me. And that's why I try to do it in the classroom each and every day, and excited to be able to discuss that and more with this phenomenal panel. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with y'all.
Thank you, sir. Our most recent GRAMMY Music Educator of the Year, Annie Ray. Wait, I think you're muted. We're still having a hard time. Let me see if I can unmute you.
How about
Try that.
How about now?
Yes.
Yay! Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Annie Ray. I am the 2024 most recent winner, and I am the orchestra director at Annandale High School. And what I focus on is making music accessible for all demographics of students. Our entire program is about the word opportunity. So whether you are a student with significant severe disabilities, all the way up to a parent who's wanting to learn how to play their kid's instrument for the first time, that's what our program does, is meet everyone where they're at. And it's the greatest joy of my life.
Keith Hancock. Keith, are you frozen?
I'm good now.
There we go.
All right. All right. Well, I'm Keith Hancock. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I teach choir at Tesoro High School in Rancho Santa Margarita, California, the longest city name in the nation. And so I'm in Orange County, West Coast, and I just finished my school day. I teach 6 choirs here, and I've traditionally taught guitar for 15 years and commercial music before that. I love providing students with a top-tier choral performance, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So this is an amazing job, and one that is so fulfilling for me and awesome for my students. So you guys that are joining us from Arkansas, if you decide to make this your career path, I can't think of a better job in the world.
Thank you so much. Jared Cassidy.
Hey everybody, it's good to be here. So exciting. My name is Jared Cassidy. I've been in education for about 20 years now. Much of it's been in New Hampshire, but the last 6 years I've been in Massachusetts. I'm the Performing Arts Administrator for Lexington Public Schools in Massachusetts. We're just about 20 minutes outside of Boston, and you know us because of Paul Revere and the birthplace of American liberty. But yes, what I love about my job, I also am the director of the LHS Wind Ensemble, the most advanced ensemble at the high school. I also work at New England Conservatory with one of the youth wind ensembles, and I'm on the adjunct faculty of the Longy School of Music. I'm working with our Masters in Music Education students and their orchestra there, which is super exciting. Honestly, I think that all of us get into this profession, I always say it's not just music, it's through music. This opportunity as a means of sharing discourse and discussion to open up dialogue. At the end of the day, regardless if you're playing this piece of music or that piece of music, we're working with people. And at the end of the day, people want to feel valued, cared for, and supported. So as I look at my students that I work with, they want that from their teachers. As a teacher, we want that from administrators. Myself as an administrator, I want that from the administration and the central office and the school committee that I work with. People in general just want to feel valued, cared for, and supported. And music just provides that amazing platform that's going to connect people together and really, really ensure that everybody belongs. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Kent Knappenberger.
Hi, future teachers. My name is Kent Knappenberger, and I teach in Westfield, New York. And I don't know how much you know about the state of New York, but only about half the people in our state live in the metropolitan areas. And I live in an area that's not very metropolitan. In the county where I live, which is the westernmost county of New York, there are 18 schools, and they average graduating about 55 students a year, each of them. My school is right in the middle. So we have graduating classes from 38 till which is 2 years ago, till just under 60. So I teach 7th grade through 12th grade choir, and then I also teach kind of a unique program in high school, which is general music for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, which are 4 different classes. I'm about to finish my 35th year of teaching, and I probably know more than I do right now, but I'm hanging in there. Our school general music program is probably the most noteworthy thing that happens there. And we're also the home of Welch's Grape Juice. So if you ever had that, I drive to work through literally thousands of acres of Concord grapes. So it's really great to be talking to you, music educators of the future here, and it'll be fun. So thanks for having me.
And Jeffrey Redding. Can
you hear me?
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, how you doing? I'm Jeffrey Redding, and I'm the director of choral activities at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, Florida. I think it's been almost 27 years now. Before that, I was director of choral activities at West Orange High School in Winter Garden, Florida, and briefly at West Virginia University. Just love inspiring students to be the very best people that they can be. Ordinary students doing extraordinary things, touching and changing lives through music, building community. Anything that's music and that's going to inspire, that's what I'm about. I also teach a community choir in Orlando called Orlando Choral Society, and I lead a church choir at Tuscaloosa United Methodist Church. So I got a bunch of different jobs. I'm old and tired, but anyway, loving what I'm doing and loving inspiring folks and being inspired by people. So I tell everybody, if you're going to be a teacher, love people. People first, music second. Love people, because when you love people, the music you will give your best to all of them. And everyone's come from a different background, and everyone deserves your best, regardless of their situation. Love people, music will follow. So that's where I
am. Let's have Pamela Dawson.
Okay, that's me. Hi, everybody. Pam Dawson, year 2023. So a little bit about me. I am in my 29th year of teaching. Taught 10 years in Detroit, Michigan, my hometown, Motown. Been at 18 years at DeSoto High School here in DeSoto, Texas. I am officially retiring this year. June 30th is my last day of teaching at DeSoto High School. I am now adjunct faculty at Cedar Valley College and UNT Dallas here in Texas. And I am the fine arts director as Jeff Redding now at New Seed Church, and I'm teaching at the church level. speaking and going out and teaching other teachers how to be effective music educators. I want to be able to spread that what I do in the classroom to other teachers and making our future educators those wonderful educators, and share my knowledge that I've occurred over the years. And so I'm excited. I'm a harpist, and I'm glad to share that harp love with our other ones, Annie and Kent, so that we can just all harp together. And I'm actually teaching harp at Cedar Valley as well. So that's what I do. And I have 3 dogs and a granddaughter.
Stephen Cox, are you available to talk?
Hey there, I think so. Let me see here. Can you see me?
Yes.
It's a miracle. I made it. Hey guys, I missed the initial question. I guess we're just introducing who we are and what we do. So my name is Stephen Cox. I live in San Antonio, Texas. I'm a band director. I've been teaching for like 14 years. Yeah. And right now I'm in a program where I'm teaching a big popular music education program and a jazz program. It's a program that I started last year. So I got a bunch of kids playing wind instruments, but also a bunch of kids in like rock and roll bands, writing their own songs, playing guitar, bass, drums, and keyboard, bunch of stuff like that. My entire career, I've taught 6 through 12 at every single position I've been in. It's always been 6 through 12. So lots of middle school, lots of high school. And it sounded like you guys dropped like at least a nugget of wisdom or something. And so I'd say probably like the unifying feature out of this first thing is it's about the kids. It's about the people. Like we teach music, but it's all people. It's kids and people and helping them, be their best. And music's the tool with which a lot of us are doing that. So yeah, keep it fast.
Awesome. And for those of you who are joining us online, I'm Jeff Murdoch. I'm here at the University of Arkansas, professor of music, and I'm glad to work with these outstanding young future educators here at the University of Arkansas. I'm joined here by my colleague, Dr. Abrahams, who is our coordinator for music education. And I almost forgot Philip because I muted him earlier. So we're going to go to Philip, and then I'm going to turn it over to Evan, who is our host for today.
See, Pamela, once you're retired, it's like you're not even there anymore. Hi, my name is Philip Riggs. I'm in North Carolina. I taught band and choir, primarily band, though, most of my career. Also with middle school and high school students. Married to a retired choral director, or I never would have been able to teach choir. But these days, I'm spending more time in young teachers' classrooms, trying to help them become established and be successful. Particularly, so many of the first, second, third year teachers now tried to student teach online through COVID, or their upper level courses were in COVID. And so they're even in the best of times, it's difficult, but really trying to work with those young teachers, to help them experience the things that we've all experienced and the wonderful things that we've had an opportunity to do. And the others have said it so eloquently, but for me, it kind of boils down to, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you approach teaching music or whatever subject with that philosophy, you'll have a better chance of being successful.
Cool. Thank you guys very much. It's such an honor to have you guys here. My name is Evan Goforth. I'm the vice president of the chapter here. And just for time's sake, we're going to start off with the first question, and I'd love if Annie Ray could answer this. Can you share some strategies or techniques you have found effective in engaging students with diverse learning styles and backgrounds in music education?
Yeah, I mean, wow, first of all, I'm just so excited to meet everybody. This is my first time getting to chat with everyone, not just in our little chat that we have going, but so hello. But to all of you. So let me tell you a little bit about Annandale. It's considered one of the most diverse schools in the country. We have over 66 countries represented, 59 different languages, and over 80% of our students speak a language other than English at home. And I absolutely adore this school because of everything that it has taught me as an educator and what it means to meet every student where they're at. So when we approach teaching, there's often this mindset of like, we know everything. And the students just need to come to us. But the reality is especially at a school like Annandale, and just in general, every single person has a different background, perspective, family story that you don't know about, that you have to unpack and you get to learn. And if you allow yourself the space to be taught by these different cultures, allow yourself this space to be brought into their world, it's amazing what you learn. And so a lot of what Annandale is really summed up in that phrase of meeting every student where they're at. And when you meet them there, you can bring them so much further than they like ever could have imagined, because you took time to figure out who they actually are. And all my colleagues here said it so well. It's about getting to know the individual student and creating that relationship and building that. So you're going to hear this term a lot, and I've been saying this a lot lately, where people are like, oh, music is the universal language. But it's actually not. Like when you go to different countries, they might have a different tonal system. They might have a different rhythm system that's not like native to us, that is to them. And so it's actually the act of making music that is, and that looks different for other people. So yes, we should hold students to a high standard of meeting excellence and pursuing that, because there's nothing like that moment when we all can breathe together and articulate a note for the first time and we create a musical phrase. There's nothing like that sense of connection. But to get them there, you have to first find what resonates with them. You have to first find where their starting point is, where their starting ground is. And so everything with Annandale, all this diversity is really summed up in my crescendo orchestra, like I mentioned before. And that's my orchestra for students with significant severe disabilities, which people might often be like, no, these students can't make music. They can't be a part of a general education curriculum. And they can. It just looks different. And when we free ourselves of that mindset of like, oh, I need to play like grade 6 rep and like have this like grade 1 performance all the time, and you bring yourself back to like what music is actually about, which is about connecting, that's when you start to have the magic happen. That's when you start to have these moments. So I challenge you to kind of go into that mindset when you meet these students. And like Pamela, I'm actually originally from Texas. So I was trained in like a very heavy Texas system. If you know Plano School District, like very intense music, that's where I was trained. I had to be an educator. And that's what I thought I wanted, until I was brought into the Annandale community. And I started with these students at Annandale Terrace Elementary School. And I followed them to the middle school. And now I'm here at the high school. And I've known these students. And I'm writing these recommendation letters for students who I've known since 4th grade to go off to college, and being like, these families have literally brought me into their home and fed me and taught me about their culture. And so I challenge you to free yourself of like the UIL mindset or the assessment mindset of like, I have to go play grade 6 rep. I have to go get that 1. Instead, humble yourself to the process. Learn about the process. Teach the students between the notes and rhythms. Teach them in the rest. That's where the magic happens. And that's where you form those connections.
Thank you so much. Questions?
Like, still what, 4 minutes?
All right. We can open it up to other panelists if anybody would like to add on to that.
Can I say something, Andy, behind that? Because you are instrumentalists. And one of the things that I found out on the choral end of that, and I'm from Detroit, and I moved to Texas. So we come to Texas in this UIL world, and this really rigid, structured sound, and this really rigid, hard, technical area. And the only thing we work about is UIL, UIL, UIL. And that's all we're taught. And we get into this choral classroom and we're talking about sight reading. And we get these kids that look at you like, what are you talking about? And you're talking about notes, and I'm a very kinesthetic person. So you talk to me and you're telling me, well, I need you to sound like this and I need you to do this. And I'm looking at you like, well, what does that mean? So when I think about music, I think, well, what does a whole note sound like? Or what if I could touch it, what does it feel like? But one day I was sitting in my room and I was playing my harp in my office, and I was like, it clicked in my head. The reason why it's easy for me as a harpist and not easy for my students as a vocalist is because I touch my string. I can feel the vibration from my strings in my body, but they can't because they're singing it. And all of a sudden, I had to change the way I taught. And so I started doing things like, oh, let me use this chime, a hand chime. I was teaching handbells. And when I all of a sudden ringing a chime and moving the movement and having them feel the vibration of the chime, oh my God, it made a difference. Or I said, when you sing this whole note and I wanted you to feel, or I want you to sing, and I said, oh, become a cello. And start singing that whole note as how would a cello play that, and what would it sound like if I was to become a cello, or what would it sound like if I were to become a violin? And all of a sudden my students started singing differently. All of a sudden my students could count because I was using a chime to ring. And I said, okay, let's use this chime. And here the chime is the clapper. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can see the movement because it hit me. I play an instrument. They don't. And I had to merge the two together to be successful. So we're talking to our students. Some are instrumentalists, some are singers. So what do we need to do? We need to stop thinking in one way and get out of this, like you were talking about the UIL, the rigid, I had to throw all that stuff away that I learned in Texas and go all the way back to where I came from in Michigan. We were very choral. We were very passionate people. And bring all that to Texas and say, I don't care what Texas thought about, and became my own person and say, I don't care about them. This is me. And maybe that's why I'm me. Okay. And so become you, live in you, and become your own technique. Bring what you bring to the table. And sometimes that's work. It works. And guess what? I'm very successful in what I do.
Pamela, it's so funny that you bring up bringing the instruments in, because I make my kids sing all the time.
See?
Like all the time. And this is the biggest thing. So I'm also really lucky. I get to work with the coolest other directors in the world, as I'm the department chair. And so my focus on everything is unity. There's going to be often times where you have band versus orchestra versus chorus versus all these things. And we're so much stronger together. And there's times during my planning that I will just go and watch the chorus teacher teach, because so much of what they do is so applicable to our instruments, and bringing that in. Same for band. I'll go and watch, and I steal so many band things for teaching orchestra rhythm, having them dot and articulate and doing all these phrasing things, because there's so much to learn from each other. But that's a later question. I'm not going to get into that right now.
So, it was just funny today. We were doing, I was talking about becoming a trumpet. And I said, I said, reveille, you have to become a trumpet. Well, what does a trumpet sound like? Oh, so become a trumpet. Okay. And they're like, oh, we get it. So like you said, it's always merging the two together. Always, always, always. Okay, enough. We stop.
Thank you guys very much. This was very insightful. For our next question, in your experience, what are some common challenges music educators face in advocating for music programs within schools, and how have you successfully overcome these challenges? And we'd love it if Philip Briggs could answer this question to start off with.
Sure. I actually have a session I do that's called admin speak. And I'm afraid a lot of times we don't think about how to put our needs or the importance of what's going on in our rooms in their language. So I would encourage you to think about that and to figure out, how do I explain this need, or how do I explain this success in a way that my administrators would understand, and also your colleagues and your community. And sometimes you have to think about the terminology that they're using and the buzzwords that are important in education, and they change. Maybe not constantly, but they change quite a bit. So you have to be mindful of that and figure out how to put things in perspective for them. I think the other thing you have to think about, especially with administrators, is where are you on their list of priorities, particular in today's climate. They're wondering, are they going to have enough bus drivers to get kids home today? So telling them that you need 4 alto clarinets or whatever, is probably it's going to be pretty low on their list. But again, if you can put it in the terminology of why it's important and how it's going to enhance the kids' lives, you're going to have a better chance of getting what you're looking for. And even administrators, you have to realize when you're dealing with your peers, with your administrators, with the community, everybody's dealing with something. They've got a sick kid at home. They have an elderly parent that has to get to the doctor's office. They have friends that are not well. We're all dealing with something. So when you approach somebody with what feels like a really immediate need for you, you're usually going to have more success if you ask how they are initially. And if they're dealing with something that's a bigger crisis, like, do we have enough bus drivers to get kids home? Again, maybe you're thinking, wait, and you approach them again. And the other thing I would share with you along those lines is you can't just hold up in your rehearsal room and do your thing and not be a part of the bigger community. Get yourself on the scheduling committee if you're concerned about how your schedule is, or if there's a finance committee at your school, or however you feel like what your strengths are and how you can help. You've got to come across, and you've got to be a part of the community. And I don't remember who the quote's attributed to, but unfortunately the saying is true. If you're not at the table, you might be on the menu. And that's a pretty significant thing to think about. So if you are there and you're making them aware by speaking their language of the importance of what you do with kids, because truthfully, most people don't understand. They think we teach a little song and do a little performance. And I hate that word little all the time. We've all heard that somewhere. And I've grown to learn they don't mean it that way. That's their knowledge of where you are. So I think learning how to speak the language of the administrators and the community, and also being proactive, not just for your program, but for what's best for the kids in your school in general. And typically you'll find that you'll get more of what you're looking for.
Philip, can I go off of that? Because I remember going to your session actually when you were in New Hampshire, and it was an amazing session. Everybody should definitely check it out. I have this idea of educate to advocate. So in the sense of, we can say that this is really important to us, but if our administration, who comes from a variety of different backgrounds, doesn't really understand the core philosophies, they're gonna have a hard time understanding in that way. I think back to, this was one of my colleagues, one of my friends, I should say, who worked in another district. She was so frustrated she was an orchestra director as well, and her middle school orchestra director, and her administrator came in and she was like, Jared, all he did was talk about how long it took me to tune the violins, how long, it sounded like too much noise and why. And I was like, okay. So she was really frustrated. I was like, so I think what she did, I was like, have you talked to this person? He was a newer administrator. She hadn't really developed that relationship yet. And it's amazing what she found out in the sense of talking with him just about his own experience with music education. What was his experience like? And it turns out, like, when he was in middle school in 7th grade, he was a 7th grade saxophone player, and he loved playing music, but he just wasn't as good as he felt he wasn't as good as his peers. And his band director used to make him stand up in front of the ensemble every day, and he would kind of pretty much humiliate him in front of the other students and whatnot. That is the main mindset that this administrator has going into working with musicians now. So you think about this, I think about advocacy in the sense of the students that we're teaching, even if I was an elementary music teacher teaching 1st graders, their formative years are going to really, really inform how they not only enjoy or like learn music, but also what their experience is like as they carry forward. They're going to be your administrator someday. They're going to be your school board chair someday. They're going to be the parents of your boosters group someday. We're constantly advocating for the people that are going to, we're constantly teaching the people that we're going to be advocating, getting advocacy from. And then to go along with one thing that Philip said also, getting out of our own silos. Many of you might find yourself in a situation where you might be teaching in multiple schools. You're an itinerant teacher. And what I hear, unfortunately, and we're trying to change this around in where I work, I have teachers that are teaching in 9 different buildings throughout the week. It's a lot to have to navigate. They feel like they're going in and out, and they're like, and as you know, each school that you walk into, when I walk in and observe my teachers, each school I walk into, each classroom I walk into has a different culture, a different feel, a different set of values and norms, even though we're under the auspices and values of Lexington Public Schools. It's okay. Every school leader has their own different thing. So that's even more important. As much as the job can be really, really a little bit frenetic as you're traveling and stuff, how can you create efficient and effective pathways of communication to connect with your administration on a consistent basis? Can you send out a weekly newsletter? Can you send out even a bi-weekly newsletter, or postings on social media, or have a certain kind of like MailChimp tool that's going to enable you to communicate not only to your administration, but also to families about what's going on curriculum-wise, what's going on. It's not just like we're saying these little performances and stuff like that. This is what we're learning in class. This is how it's going to help cultivate us as human beings in the future. I also think about, I know some of you are just getting into the career of music and music education. Developing your own, I hate saying this word because it sounds super bland, but I'm a geek. I love this idea of strategic planning, this idea of like, okay, where am I right now? I do it every year, even as an administrator, as a teacher. What are our goals? What are the goals? Why do those goals exist? What are my action steps and plans? And who are the stakeholders involved with executing that plan and also the follow through of that plan? When you partner and share this information, that's kind of an edu-speak that administrators understand. They're part of strategic planning all the time. They're part of annual year progress. They're part of all these like kind of like what do you call those words? Buzzwords, if you will. But that's going to resonate with them in a way that transcends just the music program. Oh, this person, this teacher is looking at their program from a 10,000 foot view all the way down to like a really granular level. I understand this. They're partnering with me. They're asking my feedback and my insights. And together in that way, you're developing a professional relationship where those administrators are going to have your program at the forefront of their minds, even in the midst of the most chaotic time of the year. So just a few things there. Thought share.
I promise I won't talk with everything. But another thing to do is, jumping off what Philip said, they're getting like so many negative things brought to themselves all the time. Be solution oriented. So come with a solution already. So that's how like a lot of my stuff got taken care of, is I was like, I found the funding over here. So do grant writing. Like there's other alternatives to fixing your problems. A lot of times if you get like really creative with looking at it, it does take a lot of extra work, but then that establishes a positive relationship with your administrator. We're like, hey, I had this issue. I solved it. Can I do X, Y, and Z thing now? So be solutions oriented.
If I could just add a couple more things there, very similar to Annie. We had a schedule issue with the middle school groups, so I got myself on the schedule committee. The principal asked who wanted to go to a scheduling workshop. I was one of the first person to raise my hand. We did that, and then I politicked, for lack of better terms, with all the folks that would affect this change I was looking for. So, and when I went to present the new ideas to the principal, I had already visited the PE teachers. I had already talked to the other vocational and arts teachers to see how that, the changes would affect them. And so it was much easier, again, to walk in with solutions as opposed to more problems. And the other thing I would mention as far as the admin speak idea, there's a brand new book out now called Music and Mind. Renee Fleming is very much involved with that. And it puts into science what many of us have known anecdotally for years. But with fMRI technology now, they can see what's going on in the brain when people are making music collectively. That's a whole different thing when you're doing it by yourself. But when we're doing it collectively, there are a lot more neurons firing and a lot more things going on both sides of the brain. So books like that are very important for us to go in and, again, speak the language of the scientist or the administrator, not just the artist.
Thank you guys so much for that. This next question is going to be open to the whole panel. just anybody can start off and just feed off each other. Can you discuss a particularly difficult moment that you have faced being a music educator and discuss kind of how you navigated through that?
I have a couple things. So probably the most difficult time I had as a music educator had nothing to do with the school, but this points to a solution. It had to do with what was going on at home. And it was incredibly crazy. I'm a dad to 9 kids, and 8 of my kids came from, or our kids came from Brazil, and they were adopted. Some of them as old as 16. And there was a time when not just one, but 3 of them were facing some very serious charges in family and criminal court. And I was supposed to get up in the morning and go to work. And that was a really crazy time. If I wanted to tell you about the most difficult time I had in my career as a teacher, that would have to be it. But it wasn't because of teaching, and actually at school things were okay. But that'll bring me to a point in a little bit here. The second year I was a teacher, I had a class called Music in Our Lives. Now in New York, you can take a music class that is not choir, it's not band, it's not specifically just guitar. It's songwriting, listening, playing recreational instruments. And this is what I do with a lot of my day right now. In my class, 1/3 of the students either attempted or threatened suicide. And I was a pretty new teacher. And for a while I was thinking, well, I don't know what to do for them. And I really didn't. And I sought some help. But I kind of had to find some help to figure out what to do for me. Because I was still coming to work every day, and there were all kinds of kids that were still there. That I needed to have my brain together to be able to teach them effectively. So that's going to bring us to right now. And I teach middle school, 7th and 8th grade choir only. I don't do general music in middle school. That's another teacher in my district. Also, I made it through the pandemic, like all of you. And I probably could all say, wow, that was incredibly difficult. But now we have children who were elementary students during that time who were probably left at home, unsupervised, where somebody who was, had to get to work said, look, I need you to sit in front of the screen today. Just please do your work. I'll be home at 3, and you're 9 years old, you're 10 years old. So anyway, those kids are now a few years older. And especially 7th and 8th grade is really having a hard time. I got a chance to talk to my school board about this, where I think they thought I was going to show up and say like, hey, we could really use some new keyboards or something like that. And what I said instead was about how kids really are disconnected right now. And this has all kinds of implications for how we do music, because we connect in music. We need to connect in music. I don't think we're really successful if we don't connect. So I'm in this class with 75 kids, and I'm going to ask them to do something that connects them. And they're by nature incredibly disconnected. They relate on a very surface level. I told them, you're like, there's a road that you're walking on in your life. It's kind of like it's frozen right now, and that's pretty easy to walk on. But someday we all need to figure out, when does the ice crack and we start to swim in the river here? Because it's about likes, it's about whatever you can do very superficially on social media, some things like that. So this is a dilemma I'm living with every day. And so these 3 things that I said, which are very different. One's at home, one's about some extreme student need, and the other is about a very broad population with some needs. There's this rule actually I really have in my brain right now so it's essentially, Kent, are you going to react or are you going to respond? And I think those are 2 very different things. And sometimes I need time to shut my reaction up, take time to do a little research maybe even, or just like walk away for a second so I can really do what I think is better, which is to respond. And when it comes to those kids I just spoke about, on Wednesday morning, a methods class of future music educators from one of our state colleges coming as a group to watch me teach this group of 7th and 8th graders. And we had some chat today about what that would be like for them. But I think the message I would like to give those students when they come in is how can we kind of connect these kids? And if there's a typical thing that adolescents go through, it's like, who are you, and how does music fit in that mix? I like to put it as like there's a little fence around your life. Is music in it or is it out of it? And how can we help a kid put it in it, because I think it's good for them. And my gosh, we have the subject area where all this connection happens, where we don't have to have if you're a fragmented person, sometimes you can find a way to find some wholeness in what we do musically. So what am I doing as far as any of the three of these, how they relate? I'm going to show myself some kindness, because it's a really tough job we have. Getting the group to sound good right now, that is down my list with some of these children. That's not really what it's about. It's more about, can we have something at stake here? Can they feel like they have something at stake? And I'm telling you part of this today because guess what? I don't have this figured out right now, and maybe I should, but my bag of tricks only goes down so deep, and there's just so many varying needs. So what am I going to do? I'm going to be nice to Kent. So when I come home from work, there's a time when I have to shut up everything I'm doing that has to do with school and think, what's really going to, how do I want to say, help me be more resilient? What's going to kind of restore whatever I lost during the day? There's this great analogy that a lot of people use, which if you don't have an oxygen mask on, you can't help anybody else in the airplane, right, when it's going down. And there's a reason that they tell us that when we're flying. And I think as teachers, if we're going to really jump into this the way kids need, then we have to figure out a way to take care of ourselves and have time to look for solutions.
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes left for this question. If anybody else who probably hasn't spoken yet would like to speak about that, Stephen, Mickey, Keith.
Yeah. So, hey, I thought this was interesting. So Kent aligned exactly with how I would have wanted to answer the question. And that's that 5 or 6 years ago, we had a student inside of our school that we lost to mental health issues. And it was hard. And if you teach for very long at a school population of any size, it's very possible that you'll experience this. And I just remember the week after that nothing that mattered the week before mattered anymore. And I think a lot of us felt the same way about when COVID sent everybody home. And we're like, wait, we're not coming back this school year. All the things that had mattered before didn't matter anymore. And all that mattered was the well-being of the kids, that we were a part of their lives. And so I think it's really easy to get distracted by all of the other things that we do and forget that thing has to come first, that there is no piece of feedback, there is no performance, there is no trophy, there is nothing that's more important than the well-being of the kids. And so I know that those experiences over time have made me do the same thing, where it's not reacting, it's responding. It's taking and putting enough time between me and anything that I would say to a kid to think about, am I saying things that are going to be supporting this kid's well-being, or is this going to tear them down in some way? And so I think I'm just wanted to echo that sentiment that, the kids' well-being comes first, and their long-term well-being means they're going to need to feel competent at the things they're doing. I'm not saying, sacrifice providing an education for their well-being, because those things go together. But the well-being comes before the skills, and it comes before any of those other things that you can be working on inside of your classroom. And I know it personally took me a lot of maturity and years of trying to understand kids before I realized that had to come first. It wasn't even optional. It has to come first.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, actually, what role do you guys think music education plays in promoting social and emotional development in students, and how do you address those in your teachings? And this is open to anybody.
Well, I think there's so much that's really built into what we do that really helps kids to connect with one another. Certainly in our ensemble classes, they're going to get way more connection in our classes than probably anything else that they do at school. They go to math, they're just focusing on themselves. They go to English, they're just focusing on themselves. But when they come to music, they're focusing on us and we. And so I'm very, very intentional about building in social activities, not in our classroom per se, but really outside of the classroom. Like every single month, our choir program is doing something as a whole department. 200 kids that are taking over a movie theater, or going to play broomball at the Ice Palace, or like something that we can get these kids together to just connect with one another outside of the classroom, and then work on team building things. We do a big retreat every summer with my advanced choir where we go up to the mountains and just get away. And we really don't spend a whole lot of time rehearsing. We do rehearse a little bit, but most of that time is really spent learning how to trust one another and learning how to speak each other's languages. There's something really special about like a music ensemble that we get kids from all these different kinds of backgrounds and different life experiences that are all coming together. They're all passionate about music and they love it. And that's what bonds us together. And so we really focus in on that. I feel like they're the most social in our class because a music classroom allows kids to be their true selves. They're not putting on any kind of fronts or any kind of like, there's not a whole lot of fake in our classes. So just really kind of leaning into that and making it as good as it can be, working hard to create that social dynamic. And that's going to help you with recruiting and retention. These kids don't want to leave our programs because they're so bonded together with one another and they've had such significant experiences with one another that they couldn't imagine their high school experience without their music class.
I know Annie wanted to answer this question too, so
I always say that we create that safe space. And I did a professional development at our school recently, and I talk about that because we try to create that spot. Okay, now it's time for SEL, and you should do it at the beginning of your class at your class time. And I said, no, it should not be at the beginning of your class time. As a teacher, you should be observant to your students and be aware of what's going on with your children. Because I can be in the middle of teaching a piece of music and I can stop and say, honey, what's wrong? Oh, Miss Dawson, what? I said, do you need a hug? What's wrong? I'm okay. I said, okay, wait a minute. Let me come on over and hug you. And if I stop and walk over and hug that child and she starts to break down and cry, and then all of a sudden I touched a part of her and she begins to share what's going on. And then something happened in the whole class and the whole class started sharing. And then I had one student say, well, you know what? Yesterday, Miss Dawson just came up to me and just looked at me and said, you need a hug. Yes, I said, I looked at you. What was going on with you? Because we create that safe space. We create that atmosphere because music touches the soul. Music is healing. And if nobody don't know that, we should know that as educators. We know what we do every single day. We know the power that we possess. When we play an instrument, when we sing a song, we know what's happening in the atmosphere. We know that what's happening. We talk about the physics of music. I said we are the only class that teaches English, that teaches history, that teaches physics. And I said, when we talk about it, I said, so what happened when we played that? I said, did you hear the inharmonics that happen? And especially band people. What happens when it's out of tune? And when we start tuning stuff, what happens? And I said, you hear this happen, and it all of a sudden it tunes. It's the same thing when the choirs are singing out of tune. And I was like, oh, Miss Dawson, what happened? Ooh, my ear. Okay. And I said, well, do you all talk about that in your physics class? No. I said, well, we need to stop and talk about it. Well, we don't talk about, well, guess what? I guess I need to become a physics teacher today. So I'm just saying, but we need to talk about, the sound waves and how it hits the central nervous system. When I talk about when we hum and we rock back and forth, and then when we hum and the acoustic cavities in our chest and in our head, and that humming And even know, and Murdoch knows when we hum, and at the church, and everybody, old folks used to sit in the rocking chair. And if anybody know, when you don't feel good, you hum and you start feeling better because it's reaching the central nervous system. That humming and that movement, there's something happening in our bodies. We know that we create that space in that healing space. So our kids don't know that, but we create that atmosphere. It's safe. I'm sorry, I went there. Okay. I'm Mama Dawson. Everybody don't know that. I'm Mama. I'm that Mama. So everybody knows that. And so we create that space. We need to always know that we are SEL and we teach it every day. Please, guys, let's always be there. Let's talk about it. I'm going to go back. I want to talk about my one little moment, and I'm sorry, my incident when I had one of my students run and interrupt my rehearsal. Miss Dawson, I need to speak to you right now. He pulled me out of my choir rehearsal, ran into my office, and said, "I'm about to kill myself." How did I react? He became first. My music was nothing. What I do every single day was nothing. He was first. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm sorry. You can take over.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been like contemplating a lot.
Can't really hear you.
Annie, your mic is doing something strange.
How about now?
No, there's something in the background. There's like a whistling.
That's so weird. No?
No.
Okay. I'll let other people talk.
We'll come back to you. Stephen looks like he wants to talk about SEO.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's actually any other type of learning. Like I've noticed that all of my kids, they like are in a social environment and experiencing emotions all the time. And like if you try to separate that from what you're learning, I mean, let the AI do that. Like, you have to address all of those things directly. Like, I think about everything in terms of student motivation. I think about, whether or not the students are feeling connected to each other and to myself, like they actually feel the human connection. That's relatedness. I think about, do they feel competent? Do they actually feel like they're going to be capable of doing what we're doing? Because, kids who feel like they're bad at music, they all drop out of music classes. So you can't feel like you're bad all the time or you're not going to stay. That's social emotional learning, right? Like it's paying attention to how the kid feels on their end. And then the other one is autonomy. I try to make sure that my kids have a lot of say and a lot of choice in what they do. And that's a revolutionary concept, especially when you do that in large ensemble instruction. Give the kids a chance to lead their own sectionals or to help pick the music or to organize a field trip or to plan how the concert is going to go. Kids can do all of that stuff. And by letting them make some of those choices, you're addressing that person. So those three things I just mentioned are all part of self-determination theory. There's books about it. There's thousands of studies about it that basically say all humans have to experience three things. They have to experience relatedness, that connection. I think that's obvious to all of us. They have to experience competence. So most of the time, they actually need to feel like they're mastering things and then be challenged periodically. If they're completely challenged all the time, they feel like they're never getting anything. That doesn't work very well. So be careful when you pick your music, people. And then the last part is that sense of autonomy. They've got to feel like they have some control or some say. And I would say that's been one of the hardest things in teaching music is every once in a while you have a kid who does not want to take music, but their mom really wants the kid to take music. And it takes so long with those kids because you have to actually feel like you have some choice in what's going on to really engage. And so everything I do, every lens, every practice, like I stopped doing chair test and, ranking all of the kids. really early on in my career because it was destroying a lot of the kids' sense of confidence. Yeah, first chair felt really good, and then there's 11 kids behind that person crying and feeling like they're not capable. That's not a winning proposition for me. And so I look at everything is it going to boost that confidence? Is it going to boost relatedness? And is it going to boost the kid's sense of autonomy? And if it checks all those boxes, I think it's generally a good practice.
We can go back to Annie. No. No. Still can't hear you. No, she's muted.
Let me try to unmute her.
Okay, how about now?
Technology.
Thank you. The worst part of this is like I am so over like virtual learning and stuff, but that's okay. Okay, so something I've been like contemplating a lot is two things. One, that we're one of the last places in the educational sphere where I have a block schedule, so I teach the kids for 80 minutes. It's 80 minutes of where the students don't have their phones, because they literally, when they're playing a violin, cannot pick up their phone. And how joyous is that we can really lean into that, where we get just them. And the other part of it is students are very internal right now. They're really on their devices. And when they struggle with something like a math problem for the first time, it's very inward. The struggle is internal. They don't externally have to show it. But music, you quickly have to be very bold and brave to make any sort of progress at all. You have to own that learning process out loud, which is incredibly difficult for students to do when they're more self-conscious than ever right now. And so you have to create this space, like through that community, through all of that, in order for them to start doing that. And so I really champion my people. I'm like, what's the worst that happens? What is the worst that happens if you make a wrong note? Nobody cares. Nothing is happening. So they quickly get to start that, and they bring that into like the rest of their life of leadership skills with this, of just kind of owning process and not being perfect right away. And our classrooms are a sanctuary where that is one of the last spaces that is happening in our schools, where they can't, if they're playing, they're not reaching for their phones. And to piggyback off of what everyone else was saying, there is also going to be times where your students are struggling with something in their own personal life, where you might be the last space where they can be just themselves, where they can just be normal and can escape from it. So sometimes the best thing you can do is pull a kid aside and say, hey, I see what's going on with you here. I'm here if you need to talk with me. I'm also here if you don't need to talk to me. I'm here where you can just be and where you can just have normal class. So make sure you're always showing up for those kids and being there for them and knowing that, but also give them the space to just be. So I think finding that balance is really important.
We would love to hear from Mickey as well.
Oh, hey. I'm just taking it in. I mean, I'm probably like everybody on this call. You know, we understand for everything we know, we don't know. And every day is an opportunity for us to pull in more information so that we can be more effective to our students. One thing I'm going to say, it sounds terrible, but just hear me out on it. Everything we're talking about is about love. And the truth of the matter is, if we're going to do this thing right, like we said at the start, we have to love people. And the music has to come second. But in the words of my wife one day, who I love, and she loves me, and we just celebrated 21 years, she said to me, not recently, a few months back, I may or may not have been a fantastic person that day. And she said, I love you, but I don't like you right now. And when she said that, I was like, wow, I get it. Because sometimes, somebody's actions can be unlikable, but that doesn't disqualify the relationship unless you make that choice. And I need everybody to understand that's just getting into the field. We have to be so careful because we've been set up for success and failure at the same time. We go through these institutions that place us next to people that are very, very much like us, and we're on similar tracks, and we have very similar mindsets, and then we're thrust into a classroom, into a world of people who maybe music is not their love, Maybe they're just simply in that class because they got scheduled in it, or their parents put them in it, or their best friend is in it. And it can be very frustrating, especially if we have rigid standards or we have a lot of pressures on us to get to a certain place, that we begin to put the curriculum before the kid, that we start putting the instruction before the individual, or that we start looking for the kid that looks like us, but the kid that's last chair has just as much value as the kid that has the first chair ranking. And the vast majority of the students you teach will not look like you. And I don't mean just physically look like you, but the fact of the matter is, if you're in that room right now, you're exceptional. How many people in your beginning choir, your beginning band, your beginning orchestra ended up where you are today? You're an anomaly. You're extraordinary. The vast majority of people that you did your musical journey with have gone on to other ventures. They've gone other paths. But that experience that you all shared was just as significant to them as it was you, in a different way. And it's so important that we don't just teach the kids that we believe can become the all-staters, that we believe can become the first chair kids. We don't just teach the kids that make us comfortable or resonate with us, but we stretch ourselves to see every child, regardless of if they will become the future whatever. The fact of the matter is, every child is just one sound adult from discovering their own sound of success. And that's the role that you play each and every day in that classroom, taking a moment, as we've all said, to love. Even at times, I'm telling you right now, believe it or not, you're not going to like everything your kids do in your classroom. I hate to bear bad news. I was talking to a group one time and they were like, well, that's not very positive. And I looked at that man, I said, hey, I take it back. I'm positive that you're not going to like everything you're doing. But whatever you do, remember this moment. Don't let that disqualify the relationship, because some of the very children that I thought didn't get it and didn't care came back later to be my greatest advocates for music, because some of those quote unquote knuckleheads ended up being the city councilman. Some of those problem children became incredibly, fantastically well-off entrepreneurs that then turned back around and said, Mr. Smith, you always believed in me. And then they poured support and resources back into a program. So you just never know. So it's so important that you leave yourself open to embrace every child and make a place for every child in your classroom.
Thank you so much. This has been really great so far. And so I want to open up the panel or the questions to people watching the live stream and people in this room. And we'll get to the people's questions in the live stream just whenever we see them on a rolling basis. But raise your hands in here if you have questions.
What to say? I have a question. Are any of you teaching a discipline or a grade level that you didn't intend on teaching? And how did you kind of, I don't say like, deal with it at first?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a high school band director teaching college. And now I just finished 4th grade band today. Would have never thought that. And I love it. I love it. I love it. Student teaching is amazing. When I went and did student teaching, it provided me an opportunity to do an abundance of things, and I just gravitated into that world of the littles, and I found that I really had a propensity to teach big ideas and distill them down in a way where kids can process that, and I enjoy it. I call it creative redundancy. I basically say the same thing 100 times each day. We try to
Every single teacher I know is doing something they were not expecting to do at some point in their career. But every kid that you have needs a great teacher. And so you train, you do whatever you need to do to get yourself to the place where you could be the best teacher for those kids. For me, it was teaching guitar or teaching 2nd grade music. But I vowed like yeah, I wanted to be a high school choir teacher, but I'm going to give those 2nd graders the best teacher that they can get, because they need it. What we do is so important, and I firmly believe that. And so whatever situation you get placed into, make it the best you can possibly make it. Don't slack off just because it's not your number one passion in life. Be a great teacher no matter what.
It's people first, music second, but your instrument, that's down the list. Music isn't your instrument. So if I'm a saxophone major who switched to harp. I teach chorus and I teach guitar. You find people to help you because really it's about people, then it's about music. It's not about me and my harp or me and my saxophone.
I have a question for Keith. I think that it's really awesome that you've found a way to implement two loves of music into your career, such as guitar playing and choral music education. When I started here, I was a guitar performance major and a choral music education major at the same time, and I've dropped guitar since, and I'm sticking with choral music. And I just want to hear more about how you chose to implement those two things into your career as a choral teacher.
Well, by job interview, they said, "Can you teach guitar?" And I said, "Absolutely, I can." That's what you do at a job interview, right? But I was a trained pianist and trained vocalist, and I knew that I could pick it up. And there was a need at my school. We had 80 kids that really wanted to play guitar. So again, I took that summer and I worked my butt off, and I took the next summer and worked my butt off and stayed ahead of the kids as much as I could. And I taught myself electric techniques and learning how to use effects and learning how to be a great guitarist. And it made me a more well-rounded musician. It ultimately, provided a need met for those kids and for our school that wanted to have that guitar class. When I started at the school, it was a very small school that we only had freshmen and sophomores, and then we added juniors the next year. And so the choir program wasn't built up yet. So in order to fill out my contract, I needed other things to teach. And I said that, yeah, I could definitely teach a guitar class. And it's been a wonderful boost to my own, musical ability, and it's opened up opportunities for me as a professional musician, as well as given me a point of contact to reach kids that maybe weren't your traditional band, orchestra, choir students, but there's still such an important need that we can meet. And also not just that, but commercial music. I also teach music technology, and I have for 10 years. Learning, kids are learning how to become recording engineers and learning just all that goes into music production. So that's another one where there's just a big need right now, and I know Stephen does a lot of that as well. That's a huge place for music education right now. It's not just about the large ensemble classes that we all grew up with. Music is so much more expansive than that.
There's a question in the chat.
How do you handle other music teachers in your school who view those groups as more important than yours? From Jackson.
So I've got a thought on this. I'm curious about the exact situation, because I feel like whoever is having to take kids out on Friday night football games are thinking they're more important. That's what I'm imagining in that situation. That's what we run into here. And so I think the way that you handle this, if you really want to do it, is you handle it with love. Like that's what I would do. I would tell them that I don't know, hopefully not in a direct conflict, but go love on their ensemble and support them. And then if they're a jerk to you, I don't know what you can really do. You don't want to fight, you don't want to drop to that. But a lot of times I think these things come from stress. I speak for band directors. I did Friday night football for a long time. And my fellow band director friends have all this really ridiculous stress and time stuff, and they're expected to have a group every Friday night and all these songs and performances, and that can happen in any ensemble. But I feel like that puts you in this really weird situation where if you're not mature enough yet, you can certainly prioritize taking care of the pressure that you're under and make other people feel bad. But I would look at someone who feels that way as maybe having a maturity issue, if I were you, and to go love on their ensemble and love on their kids just like they were your own. And if that person's still upset with you, I really don't know if there's anything you can do. So try not to be bothered by it. I also don't know if that was good advice. Maybe that was bad advice.
Calendaring. You got to make sure you're minimizing conflicts as much as possible, and that it's not a competition. I mean, and if we feel that internally, then we got to look at our own hearts and be like, if I'm always feeling slighted because the kids have band or they've got orchestra or whatever, then I got to look at what I'm feeling about that. But do everything you can to minimize conflicts and let the other teachers know that you value their curriculum, and hopefully they reciprocate.
Any other
I have a question. I've got a question. So we give of ourselves all day long, sometimes depending on the area and the level, sometimes it's 6 days a week, sometimes it's 7 days a week, depending on whether it's football or basketball season or assessment time. What do you do to recharge that's not music related? What do you do for you to kind of give to yourself? I know that's a hard one, isn't it?
I can chime in. I just think about Ken. So everything I say about being a parent, he has got me 10 million fold. I think that one thing I've realized, thank God my husband, we have 2 children ourselves. I have a 7 and a 5-year-old, and there's a lot going on. I think going back to even one of the questions that was asked earlier is just like, the amount of time that you spend with your students and your program, it's really important to balance it out. And here I am 20 years into my career, and I'm still trying to figure that out. We're always trying to really support what we're doing. And thank God my husband is a exceptionally understanding person. He's also a school administrator, so he at least understands a little bit of like the intricacies of what I do. He's also a musician, so he understands that as well. I think that's about, for myself, I can't always get away from just finding time to just like fill my own cup. When in essence, what I do aside from my work, but my family is such a huge part of that. It is exhausting. I'm sure many of you, if you are partnered, you have children or whatnot, I don't think it's going to say anything that's relaxing about having kids. I think about Annie on the call earlier with her little kid on her lap, who's on her lap right now, and balancing things out. Hi. She's adorable. But enjoying that time, I think for myself, I've got to, even though it's exhausting being a parent, I have to completely uncouple myself away from work sometimes and truly invest in the moment with my kids, with my husband, with our family, and just finding those times. There's a point like a while ago, we were like so wrapped up, even for my husband and myself, like we haven't even gone out on a date. That sounds really cheesy, for a long time. And just realizing those moments, that seems kind of cheesy, but it's really important to have your finger on the pulse of like, yes, we are invested in our students, and yes, we are invested in our programs. And as an administrator, I'm invested in the community and the teachers I work with. But I first and foremost have to be invested in my own health and also my family. And that's what's going to enable me to fill my cup. And as Ken said, like it helps me put my own oxygen mask on first before going back in to school the next day or the next year. So again, really being mindful and self-aware of what you need in your time. Many of you right now are, you're doing your studies. We're at that point right now. Some of you are graduating. Some of you are looking at jobs and things like that. There are so many different layers. It's about really finding those priorities. And I don't think there's ever a time where I feel like, oh, I'm just going to be able to, like, this fills my cup completely in this certain way. I think it's a combination of things. If that answers the question in a roundabout way. I just look at everybody on the screen. Everybody here is involved with so many things and so many exciting initiatives and so many exciting opportunities and things like that. And what I've realized is that, yes, it's wonderful and I love providing these experiences, but if I'm not alive, if I have like my own health stuff, I'm not going to be able to continue providing those experiences to my students, let alone my family.
Yeah, one thing that struck me a few years ago was I had a friend of mine tell me that work-life balance is not possible, that's wrong. And I really kind of pushed back on that for a while until I realized that she was right, that there's no such thing as work-life balance, but there's work-life rhythm. She says it's not balance, but there's rhythm. And I was like, no, the pyramid. And I'm like, I was trying to equate it to the sound pyramid. I'm like, and she's like, that's cute, that's cool. She wasn't a musician. She said, I don't know music, but I know life. It's no balance, it's rhythm. And then I started to look back at it, and I realized that when we can get on the right cadence, we're creatures of habit. Our habits shape us. How we go about our days shape us. And when we go about our days with happenstance instead of, I'm gonna say it's the habit stacks instead of happenstance, then we set ourselves up for a failure. And too many people leave things just to be. I believe in operating with a high level of intentionality. Doesn't mean that I get it right all the time. Doesn't mean that I'm all knowing, but I do recognize that time is money and money is time, and they're both currency. The only difference is if I spend all my money, I can make more of that. If I spend all my time, I'm done. So I asked myself, if I got 24 hours in a day, do I really? Truth is, nobody has 24 hours in a day because you're going to sleep. I mean, you're going to sleep. There's certain things that are non-negotiables. And those are just like in the real world where you think about a mortgage or you think about a car note or whatever, taxes, your paycheck that you're going to get is a lie. Okay. They got the gross and they got the net, right? There's a number that's cute, but you ain't really making it. Right. And that whole 24 hours in a day, that's cute, but nobody's got it. So once you start asking yourself, what do I really have to work with? It's almost like you're budgeting your time. And then you realize, wow, I only really have in this day, when I factor in sleeping, working, I determine how many hours I want to work. I really only have about 3 hours to my day. Now it really makes me ask the question, how do I want to spend that currency? And what is the rhythm that I want to use in spending it, the frequency I want to spend it? And I found that when I take time to look at things like that, it causes me to prioritize, just like with money, just like budgeting, I'm prioritizing that currency called my time. So that on a day where a friend of mine calls and says, hey, we got a Zoom, I can take that time away from home because I gave that time earlier. Right. So she ain't gonna be mad when I get home. I hope, unless I did something else. I don't know. It ain't Dr. Murdoch's fault. That's all I'm saying.
There was another question that was asked that some of our panelists have already answered, but they answered on YouTube, but it hasn't been spoken aloud, so I'm just going to read it real quick. Brittany Hedden, one of our master's degree alumna, asks, how do you keep historically marginalized music alive when it's overshadowed by mainstream music that is heavily in music curriculum and course catalogs? And so Keith said, I do daily listening activities in my choirs of styles of music that students don't ordinarily listen to. Classical music history, popular music history, jazz, opera, world music. So they get a good understanding of different styles of music outside the music we normally perform, what they may not normally listen to. Keith also says, we have the ability to be diverse programmer, and I think it's part of our jobs to do so. We need to do the research necessary to make that an important part of our curriculum. Annie Ray seconds it. And then finally, he says, in my situation, I'm not told what music to program, it's all on me. So before beginning the year, I plan the entire year for the ensemble. So I'm giving kids a diverse repertoire to perform and study. Those are all amazing answers. We're gonna wrap up here. Speaking of repertoire, we're actually getting ready to go upstairs and sing some Chichester songs here in a minute. But before we go, can we have you guys to just share just one short tidbit of knowledge to give to the folks that's in this room and the folks who are watching virtually to leave here? What's one thing that we can leave with? Let's just go around the room. Don't everybody talk at once. Pam, you go first.
Don't make it about you.
Yes, love it, Kent.
Be as prepared as possible going into each class period so that you can move your pacing very quickly, so that doesn't allow kids to get into side conversations, and keeps your pacing a lot quicker and helps your classroom management.
I was going to say, always be a learner. You're constantly learning. Yes, you are teaching, you're providing an experience for the students, but continue to keep being a learner yourself and provide the space and energy, like some folks were saying today, for students to be part of that learning along with you. They sometimes, when you provide a platform for them to provide insight and allow them to open up the dialogue, that's when the most transformative things happen.
I would just say, particularly to the students, but any young, well, really all of us, but determine or find mentors that teach in similar situations that you do and have been successful. Some states or organizations have formal mentor programs, but for many of us, those didn't exist when we started, so we had to find our own. And it's okay to have multiple mentors. Some may be able to help you more pedagogically, and some may be able to help you fundraise or plan a trip. There are lots of different mentors that you can have, but that's a two-way street. So you've got to seek them out and help to nurture and establish that relationship.
Yeah, just
So
piggyback off on that. Two things, I think having methods and having mentors, like you said, methods in the sense of having systems. If you can get what you're doing in a system that kids can then use autonomously, whether it's how to enter the classroom, whether it's how to self-assess, whether it's whatever it is, if you can break it down into a system that they can use, now you're putting yourself in a position to automate, to delegate, and ultimately so they can elevate what they do. And I think any teacher that uses effective instructional practices, these systems, they set themselves apart. And don't forget that the teacher is the biggest difference maker in the classroom. Systems are great, but people are the difference. So just know that you matter more than you realize.
As someone who talks way too much, I acknowledge how cheap talk is. So on all the things from earlier, like when we were talking about advocacy, don't go tell people how important music is and how important the program is. Show them. Don't tell them it's important. Be important. Be in the community. Engage with the parents. Get those administrators into some performances or into your classroom where they can see, because once they see it, they know. Same thing with the students. Don't tell them that you care about them. Show them that you care about them. Give them the patience and kindness that shows caring. Don't just say it. Same thing with music. If you love music, show them how much you love music. Be a big old music nerd when you come in there every day. Don't just tell them how much you love music. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was waiting for my dogs that were howling. Always remember, be patient with yourself. Remember that Rome wasn't built in a day. So when you're going in with all these wonderful ideas in front of your classroom, make sure that you know that Rome was not built in a day. You're going to be able to accomplish what you're setting yourself to do. It's going to be all right. Okay.
Thank you guys so much. We're really honored to have you all here, and we know that it's a blessing to have y'all sacrifice some of your time out of your day for you to be here. And it's kind of a big moment to have all the GRAMMY Music Educators here for the past 11 years in one place. And so we're really thankful for that. And so we're going to go ahead and wrap up and go sing some Chichester songs. And we really thank you guys for having us.